Hi, welcome. My name's Gary Buchanan, and I am the community manager here at BoxCast. Today, I'm going to show you how to set up a mixing structure so you get the best audio quality for your live stream and for your house. So let's get started. I am running an X32 digital mixing console. You can totally do this with a analog console. It's basically the same concepts I'm going to show you, but I want to teach you a little bit about how mixing works and how we're going to do it in an environment where it's conducive to like live streams or into your mains. These concepts should be universal. And what I'm going to teach you today is what is the best practice. Now, it's been a long time since I've taken audio reinforcement, but this is the way I was shown to do it, and it really does make sense when you think about it. And within this, I'm going to give you some tips on how to properly mix this out so you get a really good bass, some really good mids, and some really good highs. So your audio doesn't sound, well, sorry to say it, janky, right? We don't want it to sound like somebody's too high or the guitars are too low. We want to get a really good level. So let's show you how to do that. So just to give you some equipment heads up, I'm running an X32 Compact, and then I'm running my MacBook Air is sending out a virtual band. We call this virtual sound checking through a mix track that I downloaded online. And we're going to begin to mix that into the system. So you will be able to hear when I'm mixing and when I add or remove something. And so you'll be able to see what's going to happen on the console at the same time. I would also preface that if you check out our previous videos about what gain and volume is and what mixing is within an aux bus or an aux send, I highly recommend checking those out before you get to this video, simply because those help you understand how the structure of your console is going to work and what the differences are. So we've already got all of our aux sends set up. We got all of our mix buses sends set up. We got all of our console information set up. And now we're going to go ahead and move into getting the mix structure set up. So I'm going to go over here really quickly and just make an adjustment just to make sure you guys can get everything properly. But we're going to first start with our lows. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever been in a place where you hear or feel the subs in the room, right? You hear the low ends. That is all sub like audio. It's basically anything that's like 100 or 200 hertz and below. The cool thing about that is, like, if you take out the subs, if you take out the actual basses, like the actual sub frequencies, the bass frequencies, everything collapses, right? You get really highs and mids. It just doesn't sound full. It sounds really weak, and it kind of just doesn't sound good at all, right? It's the subs that actually, it's that main sub mixing of the frequencies that actually helps, okay? And so with that, we're going to work on our basses first. So we always start low. So here on our console, I have it set up where our drums and our bass guitar are right next to each other, and we're going to start on all of our low-end instruments. Low-end instruments would constitute something like a kick drum or maybe a bass guitar. Toms would be included in that. I generally like to put all of my drums into one actual category of lows. So that means snare. Even though your snare drum is really not going to be a low-end part of that, the snare drum is actually more of a mid-high end version of those EQs, but I like to start with the drums. And particularly, I'll start with a kick drum. So if you have a kick drum mic'd on your equipment into your console, we'll start there, and you'll start to hear a thump of a kick drum as it comes in. So you get your gain structure properly set, and you're going to have your drummer begin to stomp on that kick, and you're going to begin to mix it in. So we're going to go ahead. We have everything mixed into one. So we're going to start with our lows. So we're going to bring in our kick drums, or all of our drums, and you should be hearing that in the mix now. We'll get a good level here. You don't want to overpower your mixing with lows, because then it becomes a little mudded. It can be too much of subs and lows. But now we're going to go ahead and bring in our bass. So we've got our kick, we've got our snare. So we're bringing in our bass guitar. Start hearing that now. And that breakdown in the song, that was a pretty good fade. Yeah. All right, so from here, we're going to add in other instruments or other vocalists that will have subs or lows. Typically, keyboards and pianos are on that mix. So I have my keys here, and they're split between two channels. So we're going to go with the keys first. So it's a digital sound. So we're going to bring them up a little bit. We're going to want to try to get to close to zero as possible, all right? Anytime we mix, we want to get as close to zero as we can. So So we'll go over here and we'll go to our piano and we're going to bring them up. And you should hear the difference in the two, even though they're playing consecutively together. So if we mute this, you'll hear keys. We add the piano. You'll hear the difference, right? One's lower than the other. Cool. And now we could add in some stuff like percussion, for example. So we'll bring in our percussion. There it is. Yeah, we'll bring that up just a little bit more. Get a nice mix in there. So from here, we've actually mixed all of our lows, and we're actually starting to mix our mid-lows, okay? And we're starting to get into a mixture of where those are going to be. So mid-lows usually are like acoustic guitars, electric guitars, any higher-end keyboards, anything that would be considered a mid-toned thing, where electrics and acoustics go pretty much the whole gambit. We like to keep them in the mid-levels. So we're going to start with our electrics. Let's bring in our electric one. And actually on our virtual band here, I'm going to go ahead and restart it over just in a particular area so that way we can hear everything. So here's electric guitar 1. You hear that that's strumming in there. We'll bring in electric guitar 2. There it is. Now, just for posterity reasons, we're going to bring in guitar 3. We're going to bring it about the same level of 2. You'll only hear electric guitar 3. It's just in there for accent, but we'll bring it up. So now this leads us into our highs. And now we're going to mix in our highs, which is all of our vocals, okay? I like to start with our main vocals, for example. That's the main person singing. So we're going to bring that person up. And then, beautiful. And then we're going to go ahead and bring up our background vocals. And now, with this mix track, they have all of the effects on one channel, so we'll just bring in the effects. Typically, your effects are going to be driven differently on your console, but we're getting pretty close here, so we're going to use it that way. So we got that in there, and then we'll bring in the last piece of this, which is the loop. And the loop is just like a clapping sound that they have throughout this, but bring that up a little bit. Yeah, so this is a good mix, right? It's an even mix. And so what you're hearing is you're hearing every instrument on the layer as it climbs and layered to create a full balanced sound. It would be something a little bit different if we heard something that was a little out of the wild. So here, I'm going to go ahead and restart our mixing here with our audio track. Okay, so it would be something that would be a little different if you heard something that was out of control, right? So for example, let's say our bass guitar was really way up there. You're probably hearing a lot more bass than what should be in there, right? Or maybe we had more high-end vocal, right? So what you're hearing is you're hearing an actual mix difference. We're hearing more vocals and more sub bass, like bass guitar, and this is not a good mix because we're not getting a balance. The whole point of this is to get a balance. So we have to be very intentional by adding very minimal amounts. I like to tell my volunteers, I like to tell them that when they mix, as long as your mix structure is all appropriately set and mixed properly, okay? Like if your mix structure is set up right, if your gain structures are set up right, the most important thing to remember is that a little bit equals a lot, all right? So for every dB you increase on this is going to increase on the main side. So anything you put in the input is going to be in the output. The crazy thing is like, as long as your structure is set up properly, a little bit literally goes a long way. All right. So you can make minute changes incrementally, 1, 2, 3 dB at a time, and you're going to see and hear those changes increase incrementally, but you're going to hear them with more effect. So we have to be very, very specific with how much. And you'll see over time when you begin to mix, you'll start to see that the mixing structure changes a little bit. You'll start to hear the drums are a little bit softer in one area. And that's what I like to call active mixing. Active mixing, in my view, is basically you're not setting it or forgetting it, okay? This isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing. You can't do that with mixing. Active mixing versus passive mixing, which is just setting and forgetting. Active mixing means you're continuously listening and continuously focusing on what is happening in the mix as well as on the stage. That comes from teaching your volunteers the importance of being active in the actual practices and in the mixing portions of that. The way active mixing works for our team at my church is that they're there for the practice. They know the songs. They know the nuances of every song. They know who's leading the song. They know the BPMs of the song. They know the layout of the song. So as they begin to mix, if the vocalist needs turned up, the main vocalist needs turned up a little bit more, or the background vocalists need to be brought down a little bit, maybe the drums need to be emphasized. Active mixing gives you the ability to add in more of those drums or less of that bass guitar when it's needed and at that moment. That's the importance for learning how to do a mix structure. We start with our lows, we work to our mids, we go to our highs. Now, with mix structure, you also want to make sure that if you're adding any compressions or any EQing, maybe you're doing some sort of effects, gating, duckers, anything like that, you want to make sure all of that is done before you start doing a mix structure. And it's important you do that while you're doing your gain structure, so that way everything is set up properly. Well, I hope you learned some quick tips here with how to do a little bit of mixing, the basics that you would need to get started on your mixing level. And again, these apply universally across the board. So you can apply them not only to your mains, but you can also apply it to your live stream mixes as well. Well, I hope you learned something today about learning how to set up a mix structure. If you want to give us a comment or a question, just link it down below. We're more than happy to answer. And again, thanks for watching.